How have I been making YouTube videos for so long without a big-ass map to sit in front of? Have you ever found yourself being a good friend to a bad friend? I had a friend like that. His name was Benny. It's not his real name, but let's just say his name was Benny. And Benny was a lot of trouble. You know, we got along really well. We had a lot in common. In fact, Benny had a lot more in common with me than he had with people in his own neighborhood. And we kind of bonded over that. And I kind of felt bad for him because he was in a neighborhood where a lot of people just didn't like him. And it didn't seem fair that people didn't like Benny. I thought, what's so bad about Benny? He seems like a good dude. So whenever I was in his neighborhood, if I saw his neighbors picking on him, I would try to stick up for him as much as I could without wanting to start like a whole big thing, but I would make it known like that I had Benny's back, that he was with me, so if anybody was going to fuck with him, they were going to be fucking with me. And that kind of helped him out. That sort of helped him have a little bit more of a stable existence in his part of the world. But Benny was always getting in trouble, and it wasn't the kind of trouble where like people would start trouble with him and then he would have to start trouble back with him. I mean, there was some of that. That did happen. I don't want to say that that never happened, but there were a lot of times where I would find myself having to take Benny's side and stick up for him, and even sometimes risk pissing off other friends of mine in order to stick up for Benny over stuff that he completely started himself, over stuff that was at least like 75 to 85, if not more percent, Benny's fault. And every time he would do something like this, I would have to come in and back him up and help him out and make sure he knew that I was on his side. And if he needed me, all he had to do was call, because I wanted to be a good friend to Benny, because Benny had been through some pretty bad shit when he was younger. And he was tough, and there were a lot of things about Benny that I really genuinely admired. And like I said, there were things that we had in common. And I liked him. And I wanted to help him. And I wanted him to figure out some way at some point to straighten his shit out. And like I said, I wanted to be a good friend. We're raised, at least if you're raised the way I was, you're raised with this idea that you should look out for your friends. That if you call someone your friend and they think of you the same way and they depend on you, that when they need you, you should be there. You should stand alongside your buddies. You should fight side by side with your buddies if it comes to that. Somebody needs a place to stay. If you've got room, let them stay with you. If somebody needs a few bucks, if you've got the money, let them have it. Somebody needs clothes or food or whatever. Like, if you've got it to give and they're your friend, you give it to them. That's what you do. That's what good friends do. And it took me a long time before I started to accept that even though I was really trying to be a good friend to Benny, that Benny wasn't really a good friend to me. That he was pulling me into stuff that really should have been none of my business. And he was pulling me into stuff that, even if it was my business, if I hadn't already been friends with Benny and I had decided to get involved in this, I probably wouldn't be on Benny's side. Like, there are some ongoing issues, let's just say, that Benny has been involved with, where I'm on his side because he and I go way back. But if he and I weren't friends from way back, I can't imagine that I would be on Benny's side, because he's been, let's just say he's been in the wrong in a lot of these situations. Benny and I were friends for many, many years. And eventually, and it was inevitable and I should have seen it coming, Benny did something that was so bad that even I, as his friend and the guy who took up for him and the guy who always made excuses for him, even I couldn't make any more excuses for him. Even I had to admit, only to myself at first, but even I had to admit that he had gone too far, that what he had done was impossible to excuse, and maybe even impossible to forgive. It was that bad. I'm not going to say exactly what he did. That's not the point. The point is, he crossed a line that I was hoping he would never cross. And now here we are. And I'm in a situation where I have a choice to make. Do I continue to be friends with Benny? Do I continue to stick up for him? Do I continue to back him up, even though I know he's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse? I mean, look, there's a warrant out for his arrest now. Like, the authorities have had enough. A lot of times, the authorities, they knew the kind of guy Benny was. They knew the kind of things he was doing, but they tried to look the other way, because there's just, when you get involved with Benny and when you try to make him behave himself, or you try to hold him accountable for these things he's been doing, it opens up this whole other can of worms. And honestly, even the cops would rather not deal with this. But Benny has gotten so out of control and so incorrigible, and has just gone so far over the line and has been daring people to stop him for so long, that eventually even the cops had to say, all right, we need to do something about this. And I know there's going to come a day when Benny's going to be standing on my doorstep, and the authorities are going to be breathing down his neck. And he's going to remind me of our friendship. And he's going to remind me of everything we've been through. And he's going to remind me of how, come on, man, it's us versus the world, me and you. And he's going to ask if he can come in here and stay with me, while they're out there looking for him. And maybe I say yes. Maybe I say, sure, Benny, you can stay here. And then, probably not too long after that, there's another knock on the door. And it's some cop saying, is Benny here? And then what do I do? I know what I should do in that situation. I mean, really, what I should do in that situation is not even open the door to Benny to begin with. What I should do in that situation is just cut him off. Is just say, you're more trouble than you're worth. What you're doing is wrong. You should turn yourself in. You should stop doing what you're doing. You should straighten your life out. You should straighten out the way you treat other people. You should try to take responsibility for the problems of yours that are within your control. And again, that's not all of them. Benny has some really serious issues, and it's not like he has the power to fix all of his issues himself. But there are quite a few of his issues, including the ones that are the most pressing right now, that he has a lot of control over. And if he really wanted to do something about it, he could. And if I were not just a good person, but even a good friend to him, I would tell him, I would say, look, I can't keep supporting you and enabling you as you do this. You, for your own good, as well as for the good of everybody in your neighborhood and everybody else who has gotten pulled into all of the crap that you generate, for everybody's good. You need to change the way you live. You need to start working on some of this. You need to start trying to fix some of this stuff that you can fix. You need to get a hold of yourself and stop fucking up. Stop causing trouble. And stop fucking up other people's shit. If I were a really good friend, and if I were the kind of person that I like to believe I am, if I were the kind of moral, upstanding, admirable person that I like to say I am, that's what I would do. But the thing that kills me is I honestly don't think I'm going to do that. even though I should. Even though most people who would look at this situation from the outside would tell me, no, that's definitely what you should do. You should stop trying to help Benny. Because Benny's problems, to a large extent, are his own fault. And you might be a good friend, or trying to be a good friend, but Benny obviously doesn't care about being a good friend to you, because if he was, he wouldn't have dragged you into this situation to begin with. But I honestly don't know. I feel like I know in my heart what should happen. But I feel like I also know in my head that what should happen, it's probably not what's going to happen. And just in case there are some of you watching this, thinking maybe this story isn't true, there's no such person as Benny, I've just made him up for some reason, I want to assure you, Benny is real. Is real. Benny is real.